Ladies and gentlemen, if you've met proponents of the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, you will hear them saying that whatever Rigathi is accused of, Ruto did worse to Uhuru. They are admitting that there are things that Rigathi has done wrong, but compared to Ruto, Ruto did worse to Uhuru. Yet, Uhuru, they argue, never impeached Rigathi Gachagua. So the question we are answering today is, if Rigathi did exactly what Ruto did to Uhuru, how comes he has ended up where he is today and Ruto didn't? What lesson did Rigathi miss in coping Ruto? If that is something you want to hear about, stay tuned. If you are watching for the first time, please subscribe. And if you are watching and yet not subscribed, I also urge you take a moment, subscribe so that you are notified whenever we upload a new video. Otherwise, let us just jump right into the subject. I want to give you a picture here. I had a neighbor who was doing very well in terms of running a food kiosk. The food kiosk was full most of the time. And you would go there and you would find that there is no more food. Actually, they had to expand and expand and expand. And so I saw this opportunity, asked myself, what is the initial capital? Realized that it was not a lot of money. So I raised that and also started a food kiosk, offering exactly what my neighbor's business was. Yet, within a month, I had closed down. Why? I didn't have customers, and so I couldn't break even. It was mostly supported from pocket, and that is not a sustainable way of running business. So I closed down the business and went back and asked myself, how comes I did exactly what I did? I opened an exact business that my neighbor was running. His was successful, mine failed. I realized something, that it is not just a matter of seeing somebody flourishing in something or being successful at it and then trying to replicate. You need to understand the underlying reasons for that success. Where do they buy their things? At a cheaper price, maybe. You need to understand how do they treat their customers. What is it that is attracting customers? Without understanding that, an attempt to replicate what your neighbor is doing is not going to work. I've even seen friends who saw somebody doing cereals and was successful, and so they just open similar cereal shops. In fact, with a very modern kiosk, but there were no customers. They had to close down after a while. Why? Because they did not understand the logics and the intricacies of running a business. They did not understand what was making that person successful. They just rushed into it, tried to replicate it. I think, in my opinion, that is what Rigathi did. Because for Rigathi, it was like Ruto succeeded through sympathy. And so that is very easy. I will succeed through the same. Ruto outwitted Uhuru through sympathy. I would succeed through the same. But that is not how Ruto has been politically. If you want to understand Ruto better, you would know that there is one thing that has always worked for President Ruto. It is called excellent timing. And that is something Rigathi did not take a moment to understand. He thought all Ruto depended on was sympathy. And so he replicated everything that he believed was going to give him sympathy. Granted, it got him sympathy, but just from a region. And that sympathy is not enough to make him popular nationwide. If you are to go by the public participation result, over 65% of Kenyans said they wanted him home. That sympathy did not help him to galvanize Mount Kenya MPs around him. If you check the impeachment motion, over 80% of Mount Kenya MPs voted to impeach Rigathi Gachagua. So this particular route he took, he didn't take his time to understand how Ruto has always been doing this, what has been behind Ruto's success in terms of politics. Because as you know, President Ruto is one of the very few politicians who has never failed any political in pursuit of any political ambition. So when he wants to be an MP, he goes in a very difficult moment and he goes for it and becomes one. The thing that sets Ruto apart, which I believe the Honorable Rigathi deliberately ignored, was the fact that you need excellent timing. Let me give you scenarios. As early as 2006, ODM had just been formed. Ruto made clear his intention to vie for president. In fact, I remember when ODM met at Kasarani, the contestants included Ruto. It was Raila, Balala, Mudavadi, Ruto, and Nyaga. So these were the contestants, the people who the delegates were to vote for. Chances of Ruto getting more delegates were higher because Rift Valley, by the virtue of being a very vast area, always end up with more delegates than other regions. And so what happened? I remember at Kasarani, what happened is that there was a rumor that Moi had paid Rift Valley delegates to support either Mudavadi or Ruto. And so somehow they were locked out and they were replaced by Vijana wa Mtaa, literally speaking. Ruto saw this. It put him at disadvantage, but you never saw Ruto reacting to this or rebelling or saying he was done with ODM or that there was no justice. No. Ruto was very quiet. Actually, he supported Raila Odinga to the end. Why was he doing this? Why couldn't he just rebel at that particular time and say that the process of the nomination in ODM was first of all flawed, that it was skewed to favor Raila? Why? A very simple thing. Timing. Excellent timing. You should know when to complain and when to just keep quiet. So Ruto kept quiet, endorsed Raila, even though he could have complained. After elections of 2007 and the post-election violence, a government of national unity, a coalition kind of, was formed. And Ruto expected to be given a serious position or even to be made one of the deputy prime ministers. He was not. In fact, he explained this. He said one time when he was in Western and Mudavadi was there, he said that the agreement was he was supposed to be the prime minister because Raila was going to be the president, Mudavadi was going to be the the vice president, and then him as William Ruto was going to be the prime minister. And even when position of prime minister came, that one went to Raila Odinga. And even when the position of deputy prime minister came, it went to Musalia Mudavadi. You didn't see a rebellion from Ruto. You didn't see Ruto calling press conferences to complain about the sharing of powers. Actually, he went for the agricultural ministry, and later he was moved to the Ministry of Education and even fired by Raila, thinking that Ruto was going to challenge him come 2012. Now, in 2009, Ruto had made it, after all these troubles, Ruto said he was interested in vying for presidency. But why didn't he vie in 2013? He calculated his chances, and he saw that going it alone was not going to work. But two, Uhuru was not going to be his running mate. He was not willing to be a running mate. Uhuru had been a candidate before, a presidential candidate before. So it was not easy for Uhuru to lower himself to be somebody's deputy. Of course, Raila was never going to be Ruto's running mate. And Kalonzo Musyoka felt he was so superior to Ruto that he could not be Ruto's running mate. So what did Ruto do? He didn't overreact. He swallowed his pride, postponed his ambitions, okay, and stood by Uhuru Kenyatta. He even mentioned this. There was a time he was saying, you seeing me behind Uhuru there, I know what I'm doing, okay? I'm trying to do this and this, and you are seeing I'm not even sabotaging him. He was very categorical. He was saying, the reason as to why you are seeing me loyal behind Uhuru, even though there are things that I should be very vocal about, is because I know how power works. So Ruto knows timing. Something that works for him is excellent timing, so that when he hits in a way that he does not miss. Rigathi wanted to replicate Ruto, but without the quality or without even understanding that proper timing was important. So for him, he would get elected, he would become very close to Ruto, and when he sensed that the Mount Kenya MPs had voted for Kindiki to be the running mate, he organizes demonstrations in Madeira, no Rigathi, no Ruto. Poor timing, because it has exposed you as somebody who is not willing to make sacrifices. It has exposed you as somebody who is willing to, who is not ready to compromise certain things for the bigger picture. So by organizing these small demos of no Rigathi, no Ruto, simply because Mount Kenya MPs had voted for Kindiki during that event in Karen, Ruto understood who he had now. It was like, okay, because we don't want a situation where we have resentment or even disappointments in the mountain as of now, let us just give it to Rigathi. But then Rigathi didn't stop there. Within a short time, he has started exposing. He has started acting as if he's a co-president. He has started ordering things around. He started reminding Ruto how we are very integral. How you owe us. We are the ones who made you who you are. You would not be anything without us. So he exposed himself too early, and so people understood him. Everything, every card he had, he was putting it on the table there. Ruto had issues with Uhuru Kenyatta, you can remember. But even when the media cornered Ruto to speak against his boss, you can go and check all the videos. Even when the media cornered him in an interview, in this interview, in that, in the interviews, President Ruto, then the deputy president, would insist that I cannot discuss my boss. It was not that he couldn't discuss Uhuru Kenyatta. Ruto didn't fear Uhuru Kenyatta. But Ruto knew very well that you do not fight those who are in power when you have not solidified your grounds. You don't fight a powerful person like Uhuru Kenyatta in a combination of Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila by being careless. So Ruto played it down. He would go to Jubilee House. He would be sent away by the likes of Tuju. You didn't see him going there with the dramas, etc., or issuing threats, no. You would see him humiliated and being sent out of a house in Mombasa. You didn't see Ruto calling press conferences and crying and accusing Uhuru and saying, no, he didn't. Actually, most of the complaints were done by Ruto's allies. But for Rigathi, it is him doing all this. And it is doing and he was doing them so early. And he made it look like Ruto was so junior to him, so inferior to him, somebody who would get rid of as easy as he wanted. But that is not how power works. When a combination of Raila Odinga and Ruto are your enemies, let's say, you cannot be that careless. You must have proper timing. And so one lesson Rigathi Gachagua refused to pick from Ruto before copying Ruto was proper timing. Ruto knew when to do what or to say what. In most cases, he would be quiet. He would go through all this, and that is what gained him the sympathy across the country. What made people sympathize with him is that even though he was being openly persecuted, there is no record of him complaining, crying, or even disrespecting the president. You didn't see Ruto calling Kalenjin TV stations or radio stations to discuss the future of Kalenjin and how they are being tortured. Never. He could have done that. He didn't do that. Even, I said, even when he was called to mainstream media to be interviewed, when asked about Uhuru Kenyatta, their beef with Uhuru Kenyatta, Ruto was categorical that he could not discuss his boss. Not that he had nothing to say, but he knew that when you become loose-tongued, what we call in Swahili kuropokwa, then within a short time, people start seeing a side of you that they don't want to associate with. And that is where Rigathi failed. Because Rigathi, you give him an interview, he will spend that entire interview to paint Ruto as the most useless person possible. He would go to a rally, and in that rally, he would paint Ruto as the most useless person possible. Anytime he had a chance, he directed his anger and vitriol at the president. Yet, there was no record, nothing obvious that he was being mistreated. There is no record of Rigathi being tear gassed. Nowhere. Ruto was. There is no record of Rigathi being kicked from I don't know which residence. Nowhere. Ruto was. There was no record of Rigathi's budget being cut and his security being removed. Ruto's security and even budget was cut. So these were different things. For Ruto, it was obvious. You could see that he was being tormented. For Rigathi, you couldn't see that he's being tormented unless he told you. So, you see, it was like, if I tell you what I'm going through. For Ruto, it was you were seeing what he was going through. This guy is like, I can tell you I'm really suffering. Believe me. And then he goes ahead and he paints the president as the worst person possible. Ruto, you could see he's being tortured, but when given an opportunity to talk, he would be like, I cannot discuss my boss. You know where my boss is? You can ask him that. Timing. So that when it was near the voting days, Ruto now came out and he would tell the president, please, even if we differ, don't go after my family. Don't do this. Don't do this. If you want to compete with me, I suggest you go directly to the ballot instead of hiding behind Raila. When now he was saying this, he already had a convinced ground behind him. Rigathi, on the other hand, goes who looked like they were waiting for an excuse to turn against Ruto. And so he goes to them, he tells them, Ruto is planning very evil things against you. Ruto is mistreating me, and pap, he has their sympathy. But he doesn't have the national sympathy. And remember, the Kikuyu support and sympathy alone cannot propel Rigathi to presidency. Just the same way Ruto understood that appealing to the emotions of the Kalenjin was not going to take him anywhere. So he never even bothered to do that. Instead, he focused on doing things nationally so that the entire nation could see what he was going through. For Rigathi, you can't see what he's going through. He's the one telling you that he's going through a lot of problems and he's talking the most. Ruto was going through a lot of problems and you could see that, but he was the least vocal about it. So just as a recap, Rigathi Gachagua failed to learn one lesson. Timing is everything. Ruto has been where he is because he knows when to act and when not to act. He knows when to talk and when not to talk. He does not just say things for the sake of saying them. He does not just appeal to sympathy for the sake of appealing to sympathy. And when Ruto acts, it is felt because he has taken his time to understand everything, the pros and cons of the situation, and has weighed the benefits and the disadvantage of that particular situation, so that when he acts, it is something that will see him successful. Unlike what Rigathi Gachagua did. He just acted out of emotion. A few people calling him the son of Mau Mau was enough to incite him. Okay? to make him feel that he was a co-president and then talk everything. He has talked to the point that, ladies and gentlemen, even if Rigathi was to miraculously remain in power, it is very impossible for them to work with Ruto. He burned all the bridges. He has burned bridges with Raila Odinga, every bridge that was there. He has burned bridges with William Ruto. Because the president will be justified. This is somebody who does not believe in you, who thinks they're superior to you, who uses every opportunity they get to paint you as anti-people with bad policies and forcing things on people. So at the end of the day, there is no way they can work. I just want to say one lesson we should learn before we copy somebody, before we decide to replicate what another person is doing. An example I gave about a business. Please take your time to understand the nitty-gritties. Don't just try to replicate. Rigathi should have taken time to understand what Ruto was doing, how Ruto does his thing, so that if he wanted to pull that, it would be easy for him. He would have gotten national sympathy that he is looking for. Otherwise, for now, he's fighting in court. He has been impeached overwhelmingly. He is also accusing judges who have also even warned him not to intimidate them in any way. So you look at it this way. He doesn't know the right timing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what has caused Rigathi Gachagua. I think that's all I wanted to say. If you found this video useful, take a moment, drop a like. Let me know in the comment section what your views on this particular subject is. Did Rigathi act faster than he should have? Or you, according to you, is just doing fine? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you've not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with friends. Otherwise, I want to thank you sincerely for taking your time to watch. Let us meet in the next video.